I'll never forget the morning I walked into my own bakery and found the locks had been changed. 23 years of blood, sweat, and tears. Every recipe perfected in my grandmother's kitchen in Charleston. Every loan payment is made on time. Every 4 a.m. morning I spent kneading dough with my own hands. And my business partner, the woman I'd trusted like a sister, had just locked me out of everything I'd built. Standing on that sidewalk in downtown Atlanta, holding my keys that no longer worked, watching customers line up inside my bakery while a stranger served them, I realized something that made my blood run cold. She hadn't just stolen my business, she'd stolen my dreams, my legacy, my children's future. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that I wasn't the naive woman she thought I was anymore. And over the next 6 months, I would take back everything she stole, rebuild what she destroyed, and teach her the most expensive lesson of her life. This is my story. And if you've ever trusted the wrong person in business, if you've ever felt betrayed by someone you considered family, or if you're building something precious and want to protect it, then you need to hear what happened next, because the way I got my revenge wasn't with lawyers or violence. It was with something far more powerful, the truth, patience, and a strategy she never saw coming. My name is Margaret Whitmore, and I'm 54 years old. For the past 2 decades, I've poured my soul into building Sunrise Bakery from a tiny storefront in Atlanta's Old Fourth Ward into a chain of 7 locations across Georgia. But before I tell you how my partner tried to destroy everything, you need to understand how we got here. You need to know the mistakes I made, the red flags I ignored, and the one critical error that almost cost me everything. See, 23 years ago, I was a single mother of 2 working double shifts at a Waffle House, dreaming of something more. My grandmother had taught me to bake when I was just 7 years old. Her pecan pies, her buttermilk biscuits, her sweet potato cobbler that made grown men cry. She used to say, "Margaret, baby, you got magic in your hands. One day, you're going to share that magic with the world." When she passed away and left me $12,000, I knew exactly what I had to do. I found a small space on Edgewood Avenue, signed a lease I could barely afford, and opened Sunrise Bakery on my 31st birthday. Just me, my grandmother's recipes, and a dream that felt bigger than my entire life. For 3 years, I worked alone, 16-hour days, 7 days a week. My children, Jason and Kaisha, did their homework at the corner table while I served customers and baked them through the night. We ate pastries for dinner. We wore secondhand clothes, but we were building something. And then I met Diana Richardson. Diana walked into my bakery on a rainy Thursday morning in March, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She ordered a slice of my lemon chess pie and a black coffee, sat at the window table, and spent the next hour making notes on a yellow legal pad. When she finally came back to the counter, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Ms. Whitmore, I've been watching your business for 6 months. You have something special here. Your product is exceptional, your location is perfect, and your customer loyalty is remarkable. But you're 1 bad month away from bankruptcy." I wanted to be offended, but she was right. I was 3 weeks behind on rent. My commercial oven was held together with duct tape and prayers. I'd been cutting corners on ingredients just to keep the lights on. "What I'm offering," Diana continued, sliding a folder across the counter, "is a partnership. I provide capital, business expertise, and growth strategy. You provide the recipes, the heart, and the community connections. We expand Sunrise Bakery across Atlanta, then across Georgia. Within 5 years, we could have 20 locations. Within 10, we could franchise nationwide." I remember standing there with flour on my apron, my hands trembling as I looked at the financial projections she'd prepared. She was offering to invest $150,000. She'd already identified potential locations. She had connections with commercial real estate developers, restaurant supply distributors, and even a marketing firm that specialized in local businesses going regional. "Why me?" I asked. "Why my little bakery?" Diana smiled, that warm, genuine smile that I would later learn to distrust. "Because I grew up poor in Birmingham, Alabama, Ms. Whitmore. My mother cleaned houses. My father drove a delivery truck. I put myself through business school at Emory, and I built a consulting firm that helps small businesses scale. When I tasted your grandmother's recipes, I tasted my childhood. I tasted authenticity. And in a world full of corporate chains and mass-produced garbage, that's worth everything." I should have asked more questions. I should have hired a lawyer to review the partnership agreement. I should have done my due diligence on who Diana Richardson really was. But I was exhausted, desperate, and for the first time in 3 years, someone was offering me hope. Someone believed in my dream as much as I did. 2 weeks later, I signed the partnership papers. Diana Richardson became a 50% owner of Sunrise Bakery. We shook hands at that same counter where I'd served her that first slice of pie, and she said something I'll never forget. "Margaret, we're going to build something extraordinary together. Trust me." And God help me, I did. For the first 4 years, our partnership was everything I dreamed it would be. Diana's $150,000 investment transformed my struggling bakery into a thriving business. We renovated the original location with new equipment, expanded the menu, and hired a team of talented bakers. Within 6 months, we opened our second location in Buckhead. Within a year, we had 4 stores across metro Atlanta. The money was flowing. We were featured in Atlanta Magazine as the South's sweetest success story. Local news stations came to film segments. Food bloggers raved about our authentic Southern recipes. We catered weddings, corporate events, and even the mayor's birthday party. I finally bought a modest 3-bedroom house in Decatur with a real kitchen and a backyard where my kids could play. Jason got into Georgia Tech on a partial scholarship. I could actually afford to cover the rest. Keisha joined the dance team at her high school without me worrying about the costume fees. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I could breathe. Diana and I developed what I thought was a real friendship. We met every Monday morning at the original Edgewood Avenue location to review finances, plan expansion, and strategize. She taught me about profit margins, cash flow management, and strategic partnerships. I taught her about community engagement, customer loyalty, and the irreplaceable value of quality ingredients. "You're the heart, I'm the head," she used to say. Together, we're unstoppable. We celebrated our 5th anniversary with a big party at our newest location in Marietta. Diana gave a toast that brought tears to my eyes. 5 years ago, I walked into a tiny bakery and met a woman with a gift and a dream. "Margaret, you've taught me that success isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about feeding people's souls, preserving traditions, and building something that matters. Here's to the next 20 years. Everyone applauded. I hugged her. I actually believed we were family. But here's what I didn't know. What I couldn't have known while I was busy baking at 4 a.m. and managing staff and raising my children. Diana had been planning to take everything from me since the day we signed that partnership agreement. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs I missed. They were subtle at first, small things that seemed innocent but were actually pieces of a much larger plan. It started in year 4 when Diana suggested we restructure for efficiency. She wanted to consolidate our business operations, move everything to a centralized accounting system, and bring in professional management. "Margaret, you're spread too thin," she said during one of our Monday meetings. "You're trying to be the baker, the manager, the marketing director, and the owner all at once. Let me hire some people who can handle day-to-day operations. You focus on what you do best, creating those magical recipes that made us successful." It sounded reasonable. I was exhausted. Managing 7 locations while still doing hands-on baking was wearing me down. So I agreed. Diana hired Marcus Webb as our chief operating officer, a corporate restaurant veteran with an MBA from Duke and 15 years of experience scaling food service brands. He was efficient and professional, and he immediately implemented systems that did improve our operations. But Marcus reported only to Diana. He restructured our management hierarchy so that all the location managers now answer him instead of me. He changed our vendor contracts, renegotiated our leases, and streamlined our financial reporting. "Don't worry about the details," Diana told me when I expressed concern about being cut out of decisions. "That's what we pay Marcus for. You just keep doing what you do best." Red flag number 1. I was slowly removed from the operational control of my own company. Then came the lease restructuring. Diana suggested we consolidate all our location leases under a single commercial real estate LLC that she would manage. "It'll save us on taxes and give us better negotiating power with landlords," she explained. I signed up for the paperwork without reading it carefully. After all, Diana was the business expert. That was our arrangement. I trusted her with the financial strategy while I focused on the product and customer experience. Red flag number 2. Diana now controlled all the physical locations of my business through entities I didn't fully understand. Next, she pushed us to trademark the Sunrise Bakery name and logo for brand protection as we expand. Made perfect sense. But the trademark applications were filed through a law firm she chose, and somehow the trademark ended up being registered to a holding company that Diana controlled. Red flag number 3. She now owned the intellectual property rights to my grandmother's legacy. The final piece fell into place 6 months before she locked me out. Diana suggested we get key man insurance on both of us, policies that would protect the business if something happened to either partner. Again, it seemed prudent, but the policies were structured in a way I didn't fully grasp. Red flag number 4. She'd created legal mechanisms that would benefit her enormously if I was suddenly removed from the business. Through it all, I ignored the whispers in my gut. I dismissed the questions concerned from my children. I overlooked the fact that Diana was making more and more decisions without consulting me. Why? Because I was proud of what we'd built. Because I was grateful for financial stability. Because I genuinely believed Diana was my friend, my partner, my sister in this journey. And because, this is the hardest part to admit, I had internalized the message that I was just the baker, that the business side wasn't my strength, that I should be grateful to someone as sophisticated and educated as Diana Richardson wanted to partner with someone like me. I had imposter syndrome, exhaustion, and misplaced trust blind me to what was really happening. Diana wasn't my partner. She was a predator who had been methodically positioning herself to steal everything I'd built, and I had helped her do it. The betrayal happened on a Tuesday morning in October, 3 weeks after we'd celebrated our 8th anniversary as partners. I woke up at 3:30 a.m. like always, drove to our flagship location on Edgewood Avenue, and found that my key wouldn't open the door. I tried again. Nothing. I checked the other keys on my ring, the back entrance, the office door, and the storage room. None of them worked. Standing in the dark parking lot, confusion turning into panic, I called Diana. It went straight to voicemail. I called Marcus. Same thing. I called the overnight baker who should have been inside preparing for the morning rush. His number was disconnected. That's when I saw the letter taped to the inside of the glass door. I had to use my phone's flashlight to read it through the window. Dear Ms. Whitmore, due to material breach of partnership agreement, gross mismanagement of funds, and failure to fulfill contractual obligations, you are hereby notified of your immediate suspension from all operational and management duties of Sunrise Bakery and its subsidiary entities, effective October 15th. All access credentials have been revoked pending resolution of partnership disputes and potential legal proceedings. Please direct all future communications through legal counsel. Diana Richardson, Managing Partner. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. Material breach, Mismanagement? What was she talking about? I called an emergency locksmith, ready to pay whatever it cost to get into my own bakery. But when he arrived and examined the locks, he shook his head. "Ma'am, I can't help you. These are commercial-grade security locks, and according to the property management company, you're not listed as an authorized key holder anymore. If I cut these locks, you could be charged with breaking and entering." "But this is my business," I said, my voice rising in desperation. "Ma'am, I understand, but legally I need documentation proving ownership before I can override a commercial security system. Do you have a lease agreement or property deed?" I didn't. Diana managed all of that through her LLC. By 6 a.m., customers were arriving for their morning pastries and coffee. They were confused to find the doors locked and me standing outside, clearly distressed. One of my regulars, Mrs. Patterson, who'd been coming to Sunrise since we opened, asked if everything was okay. "I don't know," I admitted, tears streaming down my face. "I honestly don't know." Then, at exactly 7 a.m., the locks clicked open. But it wasn't me who opened them. It was Marcus Webb, Diana's COO, along with two people I'd never seen before. A man and a woman in Sunrise Bakery uniforms carrying boxes of supplies inside. "Marcus!" I called out, rushing toward the door. "What's going on? Why was I locked out?" He looked at me with something that might have been pity. "Ms. Whitmore, I've been instructed not to speak with you directly. Please contact Ms. Richardson's attorney." He handed me a business card. "All communications need to go through legal channels now." "Legal channels?" "Marcus, I'm your boss. This is my bakery. According to the partnership agreement and recent corporate restructuring, you're actually a minority stakeholder with suspended operational authority. I'm sorry, Margaret. I'm just doing my job." He went inside and locked the door behind him. Through the window, I watched the new employees begin the morning setup, tasks I'd done myself for over 20 years. They were using my grandmother's recipes, my techniques, and serving my customers. But I was on the outside, locked out of everything I'd built. I drove to our other 6 locations. Same thing at every single one. Locks changed, new staff I'd never met, my access revoked, my role eliminated. By noon, I was sitting in the parking lot of our Buckhead location, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe, trying to figure out what to do next. That's when my phone rang, unknown number. "Margaret Whitmore?" A woman's voice, professional and cold. "Yes?" "This is Jennifer Lawson from Richardson Consulting Group. I'm calling on behalf of Diana Richardson regarding the dissolution of your partnership agreement. Ms. Richardson is prepared to offer you a buyout settlement of $100,000 in exchange for your complete surrender of all ownership claims, intellectual property rights, and non-compete agreement. You have 72 hours to accept this offer before it's withdrawn and litigation proceeds." $100,000 for a business worth over $4 million, for 8 years of my life, for my grandmother's legacy. "Is Diana there?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Ms. Richardson has no interest in personal communication at this time. All negotiations will be conducted through legal representatives. Do you have an attorney, Ms. Whitmore?" I didn't. I'd never needed one. Diana always handled the legal stuff. I'll need time to think about this," I said. "You have 72 hours. After that, Ms. Richardson will pursue full legal remedies for your documented breaches of contract, financial mismanagement, and theft of company resources. I'd strongly advise you to consult legal counsel immediately. Good day, Ms. Whitmore." She hung up. I sat there in that parking lot for 3 hours, paralyzed by shock, betrayal, and fear. My entire world had collapsed in a single morning, and I had no idea how to even begin putting it back together. But as the sun started to set and I watched customers leave our Buckhead location with bags of pastries, my pastries, made from my grandmother's recipes, something shifted inside me. The shock began to burn away, replaced by something colder and harder. Diana Richardson had made a critical mistake. She'd underestimated me. She thought because I was just a baker, because I'd trusted her with the business side, that I would crumble under pressure, that I'd take her insulting buyout offer and slink away quietly. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I was Margaret Whitmore. I was the granddaughter of a woman who raised 9 children during Jim Crow in rural South Carolina. I was a single mother who'd built a business from scratch with $12,000 and a dream. I was a woman who'd worked 16-hour days for years without complaint, and I was not going to let some corporate predator steal my life's work without a fight. I started my car, wiped my tears, and made a decision that would change everything. I was going to take back my business, every single piece of it, but I wasn't going to do it with anger or revenge or violence. I was going to do it the smart way, the patient way, the way that would expose Diana Richardson to exactly who she was and ensure she could never do this to anyone else. The first thing I did was something I should have done 8 years earlier. I hired a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I needed someone who specialized in partnership disputes and corporate fraud. I spent 2 days calling every attorney in Atlanta, explaining my situation, getting referred to someone else, until finally I found her, Veronica Hayes, 62 years old, black woman, former corporate attorney, who'd left big law to help small business owners fight back against exactly this kind of predatory behavior. She had a small office in Sweet Auburn, lined with photos of her clients who'd won cases against corporations that tried to steal their businesses. "Ms. Whitmore," she said after I'd poured out my entire story, "I've seen this exact playbook before. These corporate types, they identify successful small businesses owned by people they perceive as vulnerable, women, people of color, immigrants, and they present themselves as saviors. They invest capital, provide expertise, slowly take control of all the important infrastructure, and then engineer a situation where they can force out the original owner and claim the business entirely." "Can I stop her?" I asked. "Can I get my bakery back?" Veronica studied the documents I'd brought, the original partnership agreement, the lease restructuring papers, the trademark filings, everything I could gather. She made notes on a yellow legal pad, her expression growing more serious. The truth is, Diana did a very sophisticated job of positioning herself legally. She controls the property, leases, the trademark, and the operating entities. But here's the thing. She got greedy and moved too fast. These corporate types always do. They can't help themselves. "What do you mean?" "This letter claims you breached the partnership agreement and mismanaged funds. She has to prove that. These accusations aren't just negotiating tactics, they're legal allegations. If she's going to lock you out and try to force this buyout, she needs actual evidence of wrongdoing. And based on what you've told me, that evidence doesn't exist because you didn't do anything wrong." For the first time in 3 days, I felt a glimmer of hope. "Furthermore," Veronica continued, "she moved against you without following proper legal procedures. She can't just change the locks and suspend you from your own company without a court order or arbitration finding. The partnership agreement you signed includes dispute resolution provisions that she completely ignored. She violated her own contract. So what do we do?" Veronica smiled. It wasn't warm, but it was confident. "We fight back. We file an emergency injunction to restore your access to the company pending proper dispute resolution. We demand full financial disclosure of all company accounts. We challenge the validity of all these structural changes she made without your informed consent. And we investigate whether she's been siphoning money or manipulating the books to create the appearance of your mismanagement." "How much is this going to cost?" I asked, my heart sinking. I had maybe $15,000 in personal savings. "For you? Nothing up front. I'll take this on contingency. When we win, and we will win, I'll take 25% of whatever we recover. But Margaret, I need you to understand this is going to be a war. It's going to take months, maybe years. Diana has resources, connections, and she'll fight dirty. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about my grandmother, who'd survived poverty and racism and loss that I couldn't even imagine. I thought about my children, who'd watched me build this business and needed to see that you don't just surrender when someone tries to destroy your dreams. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's get my bakery back." Over the next 2 weeks, Veronica moved like a force of nature. She filed emergency motions with the court, subpoenaed Diana's financial records, and challenged every single legal maneuver Diana had made. She hired a forensic accountant to examine Sunrise Bakery's books, looking for evidence of the financial mismanagement Diana claimed I'd committed. And that's when we started finding the truth. The forensic accountant, Robert Chen, was a quiet man in his 40s who'd built his career analyzing corporate fraud. He spent 3 days poring through years of financial records, and when he called me into Veronica's office to review his findings, his expression was grim. "Ms. Whitmore," he said, pulling up spreadsheets on his laptop, "Diana Richardson has been systematically stealing from your company for at least 3 years, and she's been doing it in ways specifically designed to make it look like you're the one mismanaging funds." He showed me transaction after transaction, vendor payments to companies that didn't exist, consulting fees to Richardson Consulting Group that were never disclosed to me, equipment purchases at wildly inflated prices from suppliers Diana controlled, expense reimbursements for personal purchases charged to the business. Over 3 years, Diana had siphoned approximately $700,000 from Sunrise Bakery. "But how did she make it look like I was responsible?" I asked. "She created a complex paper trail where certain expenses were coded as coming from your approval authority, even though you never authorized them. She'd use your email signature, forge your electronic approvals, and manipulate documentation to make it appear you were the one making these questionable financial decisions. Then she'd use that manufactured evidence to claim you were mismanaging the company." It was diabolical. She'd been framing me for her own theft for years, building the documentation she'd need to eventually force me out. "But she made mistakes," Robert continued. "The paper trail is sophisticated, but it's not perfect. There are timestamp inconsistencies, electronic signatures that can be traced back to her devices, and vendor contracts with terms that only make sense if she's receiving kickbacks. With a proper forensic investigation, we can prove fraud." Veronica leaned forward. "These changes everything, Margaret. Diana isn't just trying to steal your business. She's been systematically defrauding the company and setting you up to take the fall. We're not just fighting for your partnership rights anymore. We're talking about criminal fraud." "What do we do?" "We take this to the district attorney's office. We file a formal complaint detailing the fraud. We get law enforcement involved. And we make Diana Richardson face the consequences of her actions. For 8 years, I'd trusted Diana. I'd considered her a friend, a mentor, a sister. And the entire time, she'd been setting up an elaborate scheme to destroy me and steal everything my grandmother had inspired me to build. The betrayal hurt worse than I can express. But beneath that pain, something else was growing: determination. Diana thought I was helpless. She thought I'd take her lowball buyout and disappear. She thought I was just a simple baker who didn't understand business or legal strategy. She was about to learn how wrong she was. While Veronica prepared our legal offensive, I started my own investigation. Because Diana had made one critical error in her planning. She'd forgotten that I'd been in this business for over 20 years. I knew people. People trusted me. And people were willing to talk. My first call was to Marcus Webb, Diana's COO who'd locked me out that terrible Tuesday morning. I caught him leaving our Marietta location late one evening. "Marcus," I said, stepping out of my car, "I need 5 minutes, please." He looked uncomfortable, glancing around like he expected Diana to appear. "Margaret, I can't talk to you." Diana said a lot of things that turned out to be lies. "Marcus, I know you're just doing your job. I'm not angry at you. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did you know what Diana was planning?" He was quiet for a long moment, then, "No, I swear I didn't. She told me there were performance issues, that you were overwhelmed and had made some bad financial decisions, that the partnership needed restructuring for everyone's benefit. She said you'd agreed to step back from daily operations. I never agreed to any of that. I'm starting to realize that. He looked genuinely troubled. Margaret, some things haven't made sense. Diana's been making decisions that seem more about control than business efficiency. She's been paranoid about information security, restricting who can see financial reports. She brought in her own people and pushed out the staff who'd been loyal to you. Marcus, I'm building a case. If you know anything at all about what Diana's been doing, I need you to document it. I need you to be a witness. He shook his head. I can't. I signed an NDA. If I violate it, I'll lose everything. If you don't, I said quietly, you'll be complicit in fraud. And when this all comes out, and it will come out, do you want to be known as the person who helped steal an elderly woman's legacy, or the person who did the right thing? He didn't answer, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. I gave him Veronica's card and walked away. 2 days later, Marcus called. He was willing to talk. Next, I reached out to our vendors, the people who'd been supplying Sunrise Bakery with flour, sugar, butter, and other ingredients for years. I'd built relationships with these folks, shared meals with their families, attended their children's graduations. They knew me. Antonio, I said to our primary flour supplier, I need to ask you something strange. The invoices you've been sending Sunrise, have the prices changed recently? Antonio DeStefano, a third-generation miller whose family had been in business for 70 years, pulled up his records. Actually, yeah. About 6 months ago, Diana said you wanted to renegotiate to a new supplier, but I could match their prices if I adjusted our invoice. The new prices were about 30% higher than what we'd been charging, but she said you'd authorized it. Did you ever speak to me about this? No. Diana said you were too busy with expansion planning and had delegated all vendor relationships to her. Margaret, what's going on? I explained the situation. Antonio was furious. That woman's been scamming you? Using fake invoices with my company's name on them? Can you document everything? Every communication with Diana? Every invoice? Every unusual request? You bet I can. And Margaret? I'm not the only vendor she's been playing these games with. You should talk to the coffee supplier, the dairy distributor, and the equipment repair company. I've heard rumors. Over the next 3 weeks, I interviewed vendor after vendor. The pattern was consistent. Diana would approach them claiming I'd authorized price increases or new contract terms, negotiate deals that benefited companies she secretly controlled, and create documentation that made it look like wasteful spending was my decision. The paper trail was damning, and people were willing to testify. Then I found Emily Chen. Emily had been one of our head bakers at the Buckhead location, a talented young woman I'd personally trained. She'd been mysteriously fired for 3 months before Diana locked me out. Margaret, she said when I called. Oh my God, I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. She's not who you think she is. What happened with your termination, Emily? I was fired for gross misconduct and theft. Diana claimed I was stealing ingredients and supplies. But Margaret, I swear to you, I never took anything. Diana had me fill out inventory forms that she said were for insurance purposes, but later those same forms were used as evidence that I was falsifying records. It was all manufactured. Why would she do that to you? Emily hesitated. Because I asked questions. I noticed discrepancies in supply orders, invoices that didn't match actual deliveries. I mentioned it to Diana privately, thinking there must be some accounting errors. The next week, I was fired and threatened with a lawsuit if I talked to anyone about it. Emily, would you be willing to testify about this? Absolutely. That woman destroyed my reputation in this industry. I can barely get hired at another bakery because of the false accusations she spread. If there's a chance to hold her accountable, I'm in. The case was built. We had financial evidence, witness testimony, and documentation of a systematic fraud scheme. But we needed one more thing. We needed to understand Diana's real identity, her history, whether she'd done this before. Veronica hired a private investigator named Thomas Brennan, a former FBI agent who specialized in corporate investigations. What Thomas uncovered made everything click into place. Diana Richardson wasn't even her real name. She was Diana Richter, originally from Birmingham, but not the poor girl made good story she'd told me. She came from a wealthy family, attended private schools, graduated from Emory Business School on her parents' money, and this wasn't the first time she'd pulled this scheme. Over the previous 15 years, Diana had partnered with 5 different small business owners, always women, always minority owners, always women, the service or hospitality industry. She'd invest capital, take control of business infrastructure, and then systematically steal from the company while framing the original owner. In 3 cases, she'd successfully forced out the founder and taken complete control. In 2 cases, she'd been sued, but settled out of court with non-disclosure agreements that buried the evidence. She was a predator with a pattern, and I was just her latest victim. But I was going to be the one who finally stopped her. With our evidence compiled, Veronica filed a comprehensive legal action that hit Diana from multiple angles simultaneously. First, an emergency injunction demanding my immediate reinstatement as co-owner with full access and authority, based on Diana's violation of proper partnership dispute procedures. Second, a civil fraud lawsuit seeking damages for the $700,000 Diana had stolen, plus additional damages for emotional distress, reputational harm, and business interference. Third, a formal complaint to the district attorney's office detailing criminal fraud, forgery, and embezzlement we'd uncover. Fourth, a challenge to all the structural changes Diana had made, the lease transfers, trademark registrations, and corporate restructuring, arguing they'd been done without my informed consent and through fraudulent misrepresentation. We filed everything on a Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, Diana's attorney called Veronica. "Your client needs to drop these spurious allegations immediately," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Ms. Richardson has done nothing wrong. This is a desperate attempt by a failed business partner to avoid accountability for her own mismanagement." "Really?" Veronica replied. "Then I'm sure Ms. Richardson will have no problem explaining the 700,000 fraudulent transactions our forensic accountant has documented, or the vendor kickback schemes, or the forged approval signatures, or her history of doing this exact thing to 4 other women before Margaret Whitmore." Silence on the other end. "Tell Ms. Richardson she has 48 hours to respond to our complaint before we take our evidence to the media. I'm sure the business community in Atlanta would be very interested to learn about her practices." Diana's lawyer tried to bluster, but Veronica shut him down. "Oh, and one more thing," Veronica added. "Tell your client that Margaret Whitmore is not like the other women she's victimized. Margaret's not going away. She's not accepting a buyout. She's fighting for every single thing that's rightfully hers. See you in court." The emergency injunction hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. I spent that time preparing my testimony, gathering more evidence, and, this was crucial, reaching out to Diana's previous victims. Thomas Brennan had identified 3 of the women Diana had previously defrauded. All 3 had signed non-disclosure agreements as part of their settlements, but Veronica found a legal theory that would allow them to testify about Diana's pattern of behavior despite the NDAs. I flew to Birmingham to meet with Janice Morrison, who'd owned a catering company that Diana had stolen 7 years earlier. We sat in Janice's living room, 2 women in our 50s who'd both been betrayed by the same predator. "I should have fought harder," Janice said, tears in her eyes. "I let her intimidate me. I took the settlement, $30,000 for a business worth $300,000, because I was scared and exhausted and I just wanted it to be over. I've regretted it every day since." "It's not too late to hold her accountable," I said. "If you testify, if you tell your story, we can stop her from doing this to anyone else." Janice looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "I'm in. Let's take her down." The hearing arrived. The courtroom was packed. Media, business community members, former employees, curious onlookers. Diana sat at the defense table in an immaculate suit, projecting confidence and righteousness. But I saw fear in her eyes when she looked at me. Veronica methodically presented our case: the forensic accounting evidence, the vendor testimony, Marcus Webb's documentation of Diana's deceptive practices, Emily Chen's story of retaliation. The testimony from Diana's previous victims establishes a pattern. Diana's lawyer tried to discredit it all, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge, an older African-American woman named Judge Patricia Monroe, listened intently to everything. When it was Diana's turn to present her defense, her attorney tried to paint me as an incompetent businesswoman who'd made poor decisions and was now trying to blame her partner for her own failures. "Ms. Whitmore is a talented baker," Diana's lawyer said, "but she has no business acumen. She made financial decisions without understanding the implications. Ms. Richardson tried to help her, tried to provide structure and professional management, but Ms. Whitmore resisted modernization and accountability." When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the witness stand with my head held high. "Ms. Whitmore," Veronica asked, "can you tell the court about your grandmother?" "Objection," Diana's lawyer said. "Relevance?" "I'll connect it, Your Honor," Veronica promised. Judge Monroe nodded. "Proceed." I took a breath. My grandmother, Sarah Mae Johnson, was born in 1920 in rural South Carolina. She picked cotton as a child, cleaned houses as a young woman, and raised 9 children in poverty. But she had gifts. She could bake. Her pies, her biscuits, her cobblers were famous in our community. She told me that baking was about more than food. It was about love, tradition, and creating something beautiful from simple ingredients. I looked directly at Diana. She taught me her recipes when I was 7 years old. Every Saturday, we'd spend hours in her kitchen, and she'd share not just her techniques, but her wisdom. She told me that in business and in life, your reputation is everything, that you build trust slowly and lose it quickly, that there's no shortcut to excellence or integrity. My voice strengthened. When she died and left me $12,000, I used every penny to open Sunrise Bakery. I worked 16-hour days for 3 years, raising 2 children alone, barely making rent. I never once stole a dollar. I never once cheated on a customer or a vendor. I built my business on the same principles my grandmother taught me: quality, honesty, and respect for people. I turned to face Diana fully. I trusted you because I believed you shared those values. I trusted you because I thought we were building something together. But you saw me as a mark. You saw my trust as weakness and my grandmother's legacy as something you could steal. Diana's face was pale, her mask of confidence cracking. "You may have an MBA and business experience and corporate connections," I continued, "but you don't have character. And in the end, that's what matters." My grandmother built something real, with nothing but her hands and her integrity. I did the same. You just stole and lied. The courtroom was silent. Judge Monroe studied both of us, then reviewed the documents before her. After what felt like an eternity, she spoke. "I've presided over many partnership disputes in my 30 years on the bench. Most involve genuine disagreements about business direction, personality conflicts, or honest misunderstandings. This case is different." She looked at Diana. "Ms. Richardson, or should I say Ms. Richter, the evidence presented suggests a calculated, systematic fraud designed to steal a business from its founder. The pattern of behavior with previous victims is particularly troubling. This appears to be your business model: identify vulnerable small business owners, gain their trust, take control of business infrastructure, and then engineer situations to force them out." Diana's lawyer started to object, but Judge Monroe held up her hand. "I'm granting the emergency injunction. Ms. Whitmore's access to Sunrise Bakery and all its locations is hereby restored immediately. All locks will be changed to provide her access, and she is reinstated as co-owner with full operational authority, pending resolution of the underlying fraud claims. Relief flooded through me, but the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, I'm ordering an independent audit of all Sunrise Bakery financial accounts, and I'm appointing a temporary receiver to ensure no assets are transferred or hidden while this case proceeds. Ms. Richardson, you are prohibited from making any major business decisions without Ms. Whitmore's approval and court oversight. Diana stood abruptly. Your Honor, this is outrageous. You're destroying a successful business based on fabricated— Sit down, Ms. Richardson, Judge Monroe said sharply. I haven't finished. The district attorney's office is investigating potential criminal charges. I strongly suggest you cooperate fully. This court will not tolerate predatory business practices targeting vulnerable business owners. Diana sat down, her face white with rage and fear. As we left the courthouse, reporters surrounded us. Veronica had prepared a statement. Today, justice was served for Margaret Whitmore and for all small business owners who've been victimized by predatory partners. Ms. Whitmore's case should serve as a warning. Fraud and theft will be exposed and prosecuted, regardless of how sophisticated the scheme. We look forward to full vindication in the civil trial and to ensuring Ms. Richardson can never victimize another entrepreneur. That night, I stood inside my bakery, my original location on Edgewood Avenue, at midnight. The ovens were cold, the cases empty, but it was mine again. I walked behind the counter where I'd served that first slice of pie to Diana 8 years earlier. I ran my hands over the marble countertop I'd saved for 3 years to afford. I looked at the walls where pictures of my children, my grandmother, and our journey hung, and I cried. Not from sadness or anger, but from relief and determination. This was only half the battle. I still had to rebuild, to restore what Diana had damaged, to prove that Sunrise Bakery could thrive under honest leadership. But I had my business back. I had my grandmother's legacy back. I had my dreams back. And Diana Richardson was going to face justice for what she'd done. Getting my business back was only the beginning. Now I had to actually run it, and Diana had left it in worse shape than anyone realized. The staff was confused and demoralized. Half of them were Diana's new hires who didn't know me. The other half were longtime employees who'd been told I'd abandoned them or been forced out for mismanagement. Trust was broken everywhere. I called an all-staff meeting at our largest location. Over 60 employees showed up: bakers, cashiers, managers, delivery drivers. They looked at me with a mixture of curiosity, confusion, and suspicion. My name is Margaret Whitmore, I began, and I founded Sunrise Bakery 23 years ago with $12,000 and my grandmother's recipes. Some of you know me. Some of you have only heard stories, probably not good ones. I want to tell you the truth about what happened and where we're going from here. I told them everything. About Diana's fraud, about being locked out, about the legal battle, about the months of investigation. I showed them the court documents. I explained that we'd been stolen from and manipulated. I don't expect your trust automatically, I said. I know trust is earned, but I promise you this. I will always be honest with you. I will never steal from you. And I will work alongside you to make Sunrise Bakery what it was always meant to be, a place where people come for quality, authenticity, and the taste of home. One of the bakers in the back raised her hand. Ms. Whitmore, Diana told us you were mentally unstable and had been stealing from the company. She said we shouldn't talk to you if you showed up. What proof do we have that you're telling the truth? It was a fair question. I pulled out my phone and projected the forensic accounting report onto the wall, walking them through the evidence. I showed them the vendor statements, the fake invoices, the trail of Diana's theft. This is why your paychecks have been smaller recently, I explained. This is why we've been cutting corners on ingredients and supplies. Diana has been draining money from this company for years, and she's been blaming me for the problems she created. You could see the realization dawning on faces around the room. "So, what happens now?" someone asked. "Now we are rebuilding. I'm restructuring management, bringing back the people Diana pushed out, and implementing financial transparency so everyone can see where money is going. No more secrets, no more manipulation. We're going to do this the right way." Emily Chen, the baker Diana had fired, stood up. "Ms. Whitmore, if you'll have me back, I'd be honored to help rebuild." "Emily, I'd love nothing more." One by one, other employees who'd been fired or pushed out by Diana began stepping forward. Marcus Webb, who'd felt increasing guilt over his role in Diana's scheme, offered his resignation. "Marcus," I said, "you were lied to and manipulated just like everyone else. If you're willing to stay and help fix this, I'd appreciate it. But only if you're committed to honesty and transparency." He nodded, relief visible on his face. Over the next few months, we systematically ended Diana's damage. We renegotiated vendor contracts at fair prices. We brought back the quality ingredients I'd always insisted on. We restored the community partnerships Diana had abandoned. We began retraining staff in my grandmother's techniques and recipes. But the financial damage was severe. Diana had left the company over $400,000 in debt through her theft and mismanagement. We were hemorrhaging money. Several of our locations were barely profitable. I had to make hard decisions. We closed 2 locations that were losing too much money. We reduced staff at others. We cut salaries across the board, including my own, to survive. It was painful, but it was also clarifying. One evening, I was working alone in the original Edgewood location, preparing dough for the next morning, when Mrs. Patterson walked in. She was the regular customer who'd witnessed my lockout that terrible Tuesday morning. "Margaret," she said, "I just wanted you to know something. A lot of us in the neighborhood knew something was wrong. We could tell the quality was slipping, that the heart had gone out of the place. We're glad you're back, and we're going to support you." "Thank you," I said, genuinely moved. "My book club has been meeting here every Thursday for 8 years. She continued. "During the months you were locked out, we met at a different cafe out of principle. Tomorrow, we're coming back, and I'm bringing 15 women who want to support what you're building." That small gesture gave me hope, because Mrs. Patterson wasn't alone. As word spread about what had happened, about Diana's fraud and my fight to reclaim my business, the community rallied. Customers who'd stopped coming returned. Local media ran stories about our story. Business owners who'd been through similar situations reached out with support and advice. Atlanta Magazine, which had previously featured us as a success story, ran a follow-up article titled "The Real Story of Sunrise Bakery: How One Woman Fought Corporate Predators and Reclaimed Her Legacy." The article went viral. Suddenly, we had customers from across Georgia driving to Atlanta specifically to support us. Online orders increased. We were getting calls from other cities asking when we'd expand there, but I was cautious. This time, I was going to grow slowly, sustainably, and most importantly, I was going to maintain complete control. I hired my son Jason, who just graduated from Georgia Tech with a degree in business administration, as our chief financial officer. I knew I could trust him absolutely. He implemented financial systems that gave me real-time visibility into every dollar. I brought Veronica Hayes onto our board of advisors, ensuring we had legal oversight on all major decisions. And I created a new ownership structure that would prevent anyone from ever stealing the business again. I established a trust that would protect Sunrise Bakery's intellectual property, my grandmother's recipes, our brand, our legacy, ensuring it could never be taken from my family. 6 months after reclaiming my business, we were profitable again. Not wildly so, but steady and honest. But we still had one major piece of unfinished business: Diana Richardson's trial. The criminal trial began 14 months after Diana locked me out of my own bakery. The district attorney's office had spent months building their case, and the charges were serious: fraud, embezzlement, forgery, criminal conspiracy. If convicted, Diana faces up to 20 years in prison. Her defense strategy was predictable. She claimed everything was a misunderstanding, that she'd made business decisions in good faith, that the financial transactions were legitimate business expenses, and that I was an unsophisticated businesswoman who didn't understand corporate operations and was now trying to destroy her out of spite. "Ladies and gentlemen," her attorney said in his opening statement, "this case is about a failed business partnership, not criminal fraud. Diana Richardson invested her money, time, and expertise into helping a struggling baker grow her business. When that business hit financial difficulties due to poor management decisions, Ms. Whitmore looked for someone to blame. She chose to blame the person who'd helped her most." It was almost impressive the way Diana and her lawyer tried to rewrite history. But the prosecution's case was devastating. They brought forward vendor after vendor who testified about Diana's kickback schemes, the inflated invoices, the shell companies designed to funnel money to her personal accounts. They presented forensic accounting evidence showing the systematic theft of over $700,000. They showed the forged documents, the fake signatures, the emails where Diana had impersonated me to authorize fraudulent transactions. They brought Emily Chen to testify about how Diana had manufactured theft accusations to fire a whistleblower. They presented testimony from Diana's previous victims, Janice Morrison from Birmingham, 2 other women from Texas and Florida, establishing a clear pattern of predatory behavior. When it was my turn to testify, the prosecutor walked me through my entire story, from opening Sunrise Bakery with my grandmother's legacy, to meeting Diana, to trusting her, to being systematically betrayed. "Ms. Whitmore," the prosecutor asked, "when you signed the partnership agreement with Diana Richardson, did you understand that she was setting up a structure designed to eventually force you out and steal your business?" "No," I said firmly. I trusted her completely. She presented herself as my mentor, my friend. She told me she'd grown up poor like me, that she wanted to help women entrepreneurs succeed. I believed her. And if you'd known her real history, her pattern of victimizing women business owners, would you have partnered with her? Never. I would have rather struggled alone than let that woman anywhere near my grandmother's legacy. Diana's lawyer tried to shake me on cross-examination, suggesting I'd been negligent in not understanding the business documents I signed, that I'd been an absent owner who let Diana do all the work, that I was now trying to use the legal system to steal from her. I looked at him calmly and said, "Sir, I was not negligent. I was betrayed. There's a difference. I trusted my business partner, which is what you're supposed to do in a partnership. Diana Richardson weaponized that trust to commit fraud. That's not my failure. That's her crime." The most powerful moment came when they showed the jury video footage from our security cameras, footage Diana didn't know we'd archived. It showed her entering our offices late at night, accessing my computer with stolen passwords, creating fraudulent documents, and even rehearsing fake phone conversations where she pretended to get my approval for fraudulent expenses. She'd been so arrogant, so confident she'd never be caught, that she'd left a trail of evidence. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on all counts. When the verdict was read, Diana showed no emotion. She sat perfectly still, her mask finally shattered, facing the consequences of her choices. At sentencing 3 weeks later, Judge Monroe gave her the maximum, 15 years in federal prison. "Ms. Richardson," the judge said, "you have destroyed lives and livelihoods. You've taken advantage of hardworking people who trusted you. You've weaponized business knowledge to commit systematic fraud. Your crimes weren't impulsive mistakes. They were calculated, repeated, and cruel. This sentence reflects the severity of your actions and hopefully serves as a deterrent to anyone else who might consider similar predatory practices." Diana was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, her expensive suit and confident demeanor replaced by an orange jumpsuit and defeated posture. I felt no joy watching her taken away, no sense of victory or revenge, just a quiet sense of justice. Outside the courthouse, I spoke to the media one final time. "This case was never about revenge," I said. "It was about protecting what I'd built and ensuring Diana couldn't victimize anyone else. I hope my story encourages other small business owners to trust their instincts, protect their assets, and fight back when someone tries to destroy their dreams." A reporter asked, "Do you regret trusting Diana Richardson?" I thought carefully before answering. I regret that she betrayed that trust, but I don't regret being someone who believes in partnership and collaboration. The problem wasn't that I trusted, but the problem was that she was untrustworthy. We can't let people like Diana make us cynical or afraid to work with others. We just have to be smarter about protecting ourselves. 3 years have passed since that terrible Tuesday morning when I found my locks changed and my business stolen. Sunrise Bakery now has 12 locations across Georgia. We're profitable, growing sustainably, and most importantly, we're doing it with integrity. I never expanded recklessly like Diana wanted. Instead, I grew thoughtfully, opening locations only when we could afford them without debt, only in communities where we could build real relationships, only when we had trained staff who understood our values. My son Jason is now CEO, managing operations while I focus on recipe development and training. My daughter Keisha, who's now in culinary school, works with me on weekends, learning her great-grandmother's techniques. We've established the Sarah Mae Johnson Foundation, named after my grandmother, which provides microloans and business mentorship to women entrepreneurs, especially women of color starting food businesses. We help them with exactly the things I learned the hard way: proper business structure, legal protection, financial systems, and how to identify predatory partners. Last month, we helped a Filipina woman in Athens, Georgia, open an authentic Filipino restaurant. She reminds me of myself 20 years ago, talented, hardworking, full of dreams, but lacking resources and business knowledge. We gave her a $15,000 loan at zero interest, connected her with a good attorney, and taught her how to protect her intellectual property. "Ms. Whitmore," she said when I visited her restaurant's opening day, "you've changed my life. I can actually feed my family doing what I love, and I don't have to be afraid of someone stealing it from me." That's the legacy I want to build, not just successful businesses, but empowered entrepreneurs who can't be exploited. The money we recovered from Diana's fraud, after legal fees and business debt, was reinvested into Sunrise Bakery and the foundation. Every dollar she stole has been turned into something good. Emily Chen is now our director of training, teaching new bakers the techniques and values that make Sunrise Bakery special. Marcus Webb stayed with us and proved his commitment to honest leadership. Mrs. Patterson still comes to the Edgewood location every Thursday with her book club. I'm often asked if I'm bitter about the years Diana stole from me, the money she took, the stress she caused. The honest answer is no, because fighting back taught me things I never would have learned otherwise. I learned that I'm stronger than I knew, that I could face a sophisticated corporate predator and win, that my grandmother's values, integrity, persistence, courage were more powerful than Diana's MBA and corporate connections. I learned the importance of proper business structure, legal protection, and financial transparency. I learned that trust doesn't mean naivety, and that you can work collaboratively while still protecting your interests. Most importantly, I learned that your legacy isn't just what you build, it's how you respond when someone tries to destroy it. My grandmother used to say, "Baby, people will try to take what's yours. Sometimes they'll take it with violence, sometimes with lies, sometimes with fancy words and contracts you don't understand. But what they can't take is who you are. They can't take your knowledge, your skills, your character. As long as you get those things, you can rebuild anything." She was right. Diana Richardson took my business, but she couldn't take my grandmother's recipes, my relationships with my community, or my ability to bake better than anyone else in Atlanta. She couldn't take my work ethic, my values, or my determination. And in the end, those were the things that mattered. Today, standing in my bakery, my actual bakery, owned and controlled entirely by my family, I want to share what I've learned with you. If you're building a business, protect yourself from the start. Don't wait until you're successful to think about legal structure, intellectual property protection, or partnership agreements. Do it from day one. If someone offers you a partnership, investigate them thoroughly. Look into their history. Talk to their previous partners. Hire a lawyer to review every document. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If you're already in a bad partnership, don't accept it as inevitable. Fight back. Document everything. Consult with attorneys who specialize in partnership disputes. There are people who can help you, and there are laws designed to protect you. And most importantly, never let anyone convince you that you don't deserve what you've built. Diana tried to make me believe I was just a baker, that I didn't understand business, that I should be grateful for her expertise. But my baking skills, my community relationships, and my integrity were worth more than all her corporate knowledge. You're enough. Your skills are valuable. Your dreams are worth protecting. And if someone tries to steal them, you have every right to fight back with everything you have. The business world can be brutal, especially for women, especially for people of color, especially for anyone without fancy degrees or corporate connections. There are predators, like Diana Richardson, who specifically target people they perceive as vulnerable. But we're not as vulnerable as they think. We're stronger, we're more resourceful. And when we stand together, when we share our stories and support each other, we're unstoppable. So that's my story. The day my business partner stole my dreams and how I took them back. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. There were days I wanted to give up, nights I cried to sleep, moments I questioned whether fighting back was worth the cost. But every morning I'd wake up and think about my grandmother, Sarah Mae Johnson, who survived things I couldn't imagine and still managed to create beauty and feed people's souls through her baking. I think about my children who were watching to see how their mother responded when someone tried to destroy her. I think about all the other women entrepreneurs who'd been victimized by people like Diana, who'd taken the settlement rather than fight, who carried the shame and loss. And I'd get up and keep fighting, because some things are worth fighting for. Your dreams, your legacy, your grandmother's recipes, and the love she baked into them. The principle that predators shouldn't win, that fraud shouldn't be profitable, that honest work and integrity still matter. Diana Richardson is in prison now, where she belongs. Sunrise Bakery is thriving under honest leadership, and I sleep peacefully at night knowing that I didn't just take back my business, I took back my dignity, my self-respect, and my faith in justice. So I want to ask you, have you ever been betrayed in business? Have you trusted the wrong person? Have you seen predatory behavior in your industry? And more importantly, what did you do about it? Did you fight back or did you walk away? Did you expose the fraud or did you accept the settlement and sign the non-disclosure agreement? I'm not judging either choice. Sometimes survival means knowing when to let go. But I want you to think about what your options really are. Because you might be stronger than you think. You might have more leverage than you realize. And you might be the person who finally stops a predator from victimizing someone else. Share your story in the comments. Let's learn from each other. Let's support each other. Let's make it harder for people like Diana Richardson to succeed. And if you find this story valuable, if it inspired you or taught you something, please subscribe to this channel for more real-life stories about courage, resilience, and taking back control of your life and your business. Remember, they can lock you out of your building, but they can't lock you out of your dreams. They can steal your money, but they can't steal your skills. They can betray your trust, but they can't break your spirit, not unless you let them. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for your support. And thank you for being part of a community that believes honest work, integrity, and courage still matter in this world. Now go out there and protect your dreams. Build your legacy. And if someone tries to steal it, fight back with everything you've got. You've got this. I believe in you.